Look, if you're easily triggered or offended, this is not the video for you. You are going to get offended. We're going to talk about stereotypes. Last week, I'm in the Bahamas. We took a couple hundred of our executive sales leaders there. We're having dinner one night with about 15 of us. The couple sitting right across from me, he's the same person that gave the Quran that I gave to Andrew Tate when I went to Romania. He's a Muslim. We start having this conversation about Muslim, Christians, stereotypes. Then all of a sudden, it led to stereotypes. Are stereotypes accidentally given to different sects or communities or religions or ethnicities? Or is there some truth behind these stereotypes? He says, what do you mean by that? And he says, are you talking about that Muslims, terrorists, violent? I said, that could be one of them, but why don't we play a game here and see what everyone's going to say? I look at everybody and I say, give me the most famous, uncomfortable stereotypes, even some of them that are popular, one by one by one. One guy says, white men can't jump. Another guy says, Armenians are insurance fraud. Another person says, Germans drink a lot of beer. French are snobs. Jamaicans love to smoke pot. Swedish people are hot. Older people suck at technology. Jewish people are cheap. Asians are great at math and science. Black people have the most fatherless homes. Asians don't drive well. Indians own 7-Elevens and gas stations. Blacks can't be racist. Republicans love guns. Poor people are lazy. Rich people are greedy. So anyways, look, if you're Muslim, some of the stuff you're going to say, that's cool, that's cool. And that's not cool. Why'd you say that? Some of the stuff you're Christian, oh, that's cool. Well, that's not fair. Why'd you say that? We have data. Top 5 countries in terrorism the last 50 years. Which countries marriage works at, which religion, which countries are the most angriest. We got so much different things to look at. But today's topic, a complicated one, we're going to talk about if some of these stereotypes about Muslim is true or not. So if you get value out of this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Let me get right into it. So look, let's talk about stereotypes. I can't stand stereotypes because I'm Middle Eastern, I'm in the insurance industry, my parents got a divorce. I got so many different stereotypes. So I'm filled with a bunch of different stereotypes. I've been called every one of the things. Oh, you're from Iran, you must be a terror, you must be this, all of them, right? But I'm in the insurance industry, I'm about to start a company, I'm on year 2. We're about to go out of business. I'm down to my last $13,000. I got nothing else left to my name. Zero left to my name. We're going to this event with AIG. We're in Napa Valley. My son is born. He's 6 months old. We're about to go to this, excursion on how to cook and bake. I'm like, babe, you go with my dad. I'm going to stay at the hotel. I'm going to spend some time with this kid. I haven't spent a lot of time with them. They go and they team up with the guy that was running the entire distribution of the company for AIG, big company. And they start having a conversation together and he brings up Armenians. And he straight up asks my wife, hey, how do you feel about Armenians? My wife is white. She says, what do you mean, how do I feel about Armenians? How do you feel about Armenians? There's so much Armenian insurance fraud, and there's so much of it linked that we're going through it at that time, and a lot of other companies were going through it. So she says, my husband's Armenian. He says, I know. And my dad is listening to the conversation. Anyways, they come back. I'm messing around with my son, and I hear them in the living room at Napa talking. Don't tell Patrick. Jennifer's like, I have to tell him if he finds out, I have to tell him. She comes and she says, babe, I have to tell you what just happened. My dad's like, I can't tell him this. I have to tell him what just happened. Such and such person asked me how I feel about Armenians because Armenians have so much insurance fraud. Boom. I'm furious. Now, the guy who said that ain't lying. That stereotype is actually true in Glendale and many parts of LA. You can look this up. Many companies have gone through this in many different. I personally have some stories of that as well. But I don't like the fact that you judge me as that. But it's true, partially, with some people in that industry. So I come back, we go back to the office. I'm calling everybody. I'm trying to find out what's going to happen here. All of a sudden, I find out him, the same guy, and their lawyer from this company are flying in just to meet with me. My guy calls me, my rep, he says, Pat, don't say anything. They may be terminating you today. We're sitting in this conference room in Woodland Hills. He's sitting right across from me. He says, okay, let me just get right into it. I said, before you get right into it, I'd like to say something. He says, what's that? I said, rumor has it that you're uncomfortable with Armenians, and I'm half Armenian. And because recently you guys had to lose and write off millions of dollars of insurance fraud, and you're thinking I'm going to do the same. That makes me feel very uncomfortable. I'm sorry you're going through it, but here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to give me a shot for 1 year to judge me based on how I run a company, not based on me being half Armenian, half Assyrian from Iran. There's a 20-second pause. My wife is sitting there, Maral is sitting there, Amor is sitting there, all my guys are sitting there, and they're sitting in the corner with the lawyer and him. Takes a deep breath. He says, okay, I get your point. You have 1 year. They get up, they leave. Fast forward 6 years later, the same man who had a stereotype of what was going on with insurance, judged me based on that, at his retirement on a yacht, had 5 people speak at his retirement. The last person that spoke was his best friend. The second to the last person that spoke was me. We became best friends. And I respect this man so much. Why? There is truth here, but our job on whatever sect you are is to try to change it. So I share this with you to tell you, I've been through it, I don't like it, and I simply want to positively change it. So try to receive today's message in a way where you're open-minded. If you're open-minded, we can go through this together. Again, if you're not, don't watch the rest of it. Let's get right into it. So, is the stereotype of Islamic extremism a fair stereotype? According to a study done by French think tank, Islamist terrorist attacks account for 39.1% of the lives lost due to terrorism between 1979 and 2019. And as a matter of fact, here's where the top 5 countries are leading the way in terrorist attacks the last 50 years. Iraq has experienced the most terrorist attacks the last 50 years. Number 2 is Afghanistan. Number 3 is Pakistan. Number 4 is India. And last but not least, in the 5th spot, Syria. Okay, so you may say, Pat, give it a break. This is last 50 years. How about recent? No problem. I have that data for you as well. But I want you to be thinking about this. Out of these 5 countries, 4 out of 5 are mainly Muslim countries. And the one that is not is India. India is 80% Hinduism, 14% Muslim, so that's something to be thinking about on what the religion of those countries are. Well, let's look at 2021. When you look at 2021, top 10 countries in most terrorist attacks, it's Syria, Afghanistan, DR Congo, Iraq, Nigeria, India, Myanmar, Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen. And if you look at the religion by each country, Syria is 87% Muslim, Afghanistan is 99.7% Muslim, DR Congo is only 1.3% Muslim, Iraq is 95 to 98% Muslim, Nigeria is 50% Muslim, India is only 14 to 15%. We talked about it earlier. Myanmar is 4.3% Muslim, 96.5% Pakistan are Muslims, in Somalia it's 99%, and in Yemen is 99%. So one may say, well, according to this, I mean, that stereotype is true, ain't it? Okay, fair. Now you may watch this and you may say, Pat, give it a break. I mean, this is, you don't understand what the West has done to the Middle East. You kidding me? With everything with Israel, and Israel's getting all this funding, and they're backed up, and of course we're agitated, we're angry, we're this. Okay, somebody may say, well, fine, if that's the case, but your attacks are within each other. You know how they say black on black crime? This is Iraqi on Iraqi crime. This is Afghani on Afghani crime. Not all of it, but most of it, it's happening internally. So they said, well, what's the history behind it? How did the Middle East get so violent? And as a matter of fact, we pulled up who are the most angriest people in the world. Middle Easterners are so angry. I said, pull up the data. Let's see what Statista Pew Research says about this. And here's what it actually says. Here we go. So the world's angriest countries, number 1 is Lebanon, 49%. Number 2 is Turkey, 48%. Number 3 is Armenia, 46%. And some tells me Armenians are going to be angry because they're not number 1 on this list. I kind of made you angry, right? Apparently Armenians, if you're watching this, we're angry. Now, if some of the Armenians are watching this from Glen, like, I don't know if I can argue that because we are pretty angry people sometimes. Fair, maybe we can call it passionate. Number 4 is Iraq, then Afghanistan, then Jordan, then Mali, then Sierra Leone. By the way, and majority of these countries are Muslim, obviously not Armenia. It's a fair question to ask, why is it that the leading countries in the world that are angry are Muslim? Majority of them at least. That's a fair question to ask. So let's take a look at the history on why the Middle East is so violent. The instability in the Middle East started with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. This is what the Ottoman Empire looked like when it was collapsed at the end of World War I. It was a deteriorating 600-year-old empire, entered World War I on the Central Powers, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And by the way, this is not that long ago. This is like maybe 100 years ago, 1916, 1917, 1918. Look who was in the Ottoman Empire when you look at the map here. Hungary, Slovakia, part of it. Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, Ukraine, Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, Egypt. I mean, I can keep going. This is massive when you look at this. And the collapse of the empire created a power vacuum in the Middle East. The new borders in the Middle East after the Ottoman Empire collapsed were determined by the SYKES-PICOT agreement. This agreement was between Britain and France that was signed in 1916. The agreement divided the Middle East into spheres of influence for 2 countries. Britain would control Iraq and Palestine, while France would control Syria and Lebanon. So if you look at the SYKES-PICOT agreement right here, you would notice that the pink is the British rule, the navy blue is French rule, and then you got the Russian rule and some of the other guys that's out there. But while this is going on, the BALFOUR Declaration, a statement issued by the British government in 1917, promised to support the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, where they wanted a place that was safe for them. And at the same time, the League of Nations mandates a system of international administration was created after World War I with mandates that were granted to the victorious powers, and they gave them responsibility for governing the former Ottoman territories. So in other words, the Western powers played a major role in determining the new borders in the Middle East, motivated by several factors, including their own strategic interests, the pursuit of oil, and the desire to protect the rights of the Jewish people, which, by the way, some people say, well, do you see, Pat, all they wanted was our oil. I don't disagree. You're right. In Iran, the same thing happened. British petroleum in Iran, Hey, we own the oil. Jashad's like, what are you talking about? This is our oil. No, no, no. You need us. Without us, you can't do this yourself. We're very smart. We got this. You can kind of pump the brakes. And that kind of pissed off the British Empire. Wait a minute, you need us. No, no, we got this. So that's the part that there is a valid point of the argument that the West kept trying to control, saying, we know how to handle this, you don't know how to handle it without us. So this led to a role of determination of the new borders in the Middle East. The Western powers were aware of the oil reserves in the region and they were eager to control them. This led to create borders that would give them access to the oil. These borders did not reflect the ethnic or religious divisions within the region, and this led to the rise of sectarianism. So if you've never heard the word sectarianism, think about segregation. Segregation is by sects, by color, communities, by nationality. Sectarianism is more by religion. So again, it's not a positive word. All you religious people go here, you guys go here, you guys go here kind of thing, right? So Sunni and Shia are the two main branches of Islam, and they've been divided for centuries. The split between the two dates back to the death of Prophet Muhammad in 632 AD. After Muhammad's death, there was a disagreement over who should succeed him as a leader of the Muslim community. Sunni Muslims believe the successor should be chosen by the community, while Shia Muslims believe that the successor should be a descendant of Muhammad. This disagreement led to the split between Sunni and Shia Muslims, and it has been a source of instability and conflict ever since. So like earlier we talked about the SYKES-PICOT agreement. This led to the creation of states with large Sunni and Shia populations that were controlled by families appointed by the Western powers. Again, authoritarianism. And since then, this has led to endless civil war between the two. So while all this stuff is going on, in 1948, you know what ends up happening? Israel gets granted their own country in the Middle East, leading to the Arab-Israel War of 1948, which, by the way, you know when the war happened? A day after the announcement of Israel getting their own country. May 15th, 1948 is when the war began, a day after Israel declared its independence. So while this was announced, the Arab states invaded Israel on all fronts, but the Israelis were able to repeal the invasion and even conquer some territories. The war ended on July 20, 1949. It lasted a little over a year with the signing of armistice agreement between Israel, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria. This led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. The war also left a legacy of mistrust and animosity between Israel and Arab states for obvious reasons, and its consequences are still felt till today. Another factor here to consider is the role that Cold War played in the instability of the Middle East. Both the US and Soviet Union supported different sides in the Arab-Israel conflict, and this led to constant proxy wars, similar to what's going on right now with Ukraine and Russia, where US is kind of defending Ukraine and maybe China is defending Russia. Just think about similar situations taking place with what was taking place at that time. So obviously it doesn't stop there. Over the next 70 years, it's constant war after war after war, starting with the 1956 Suez Crisis, a war between Egypt, France, and the UK. Then you have the 1967 Six-Day War between Israel and a coalition of Arab states. Then you have the 1973 Yom Kippur War, a war between Israel and coalition of Arab states. Then you have the 1979 Iran-Iraq War, which was obviously between Iran and Iraq, leading after the revolution when the Shah was in exile. And this war ended in 1988, a 9-year war. By the way, from 1979 to 1988, I lived in Iran, in the capital. We got bombed. It's a lot of ugly stuff. This really happened. That's a lot of agitation and anger that this causes in the people, and it was constant. Then in 1982, Lebanon war between Israel and a coalition of Lebanese and Palestinian forces. This war ended in 85. Then you have the 1991 Gulf War between a coalition of forces led by United States and Iraq. Then you have 2003 Iraq War, which lasted till 2011 with the withdrawal of US forces from Iraq. Then you have the 2006 Lebanon War between Israeli and Hezbollah. The war ended in the same year, but no peace agreement was ever reached. Then you have the 2011 Syrian civil war. Then you have the 2014 to present Yemeni civil war, which eventually escalated into a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The war has caused a humanitarian crisis in Yemen, and again, it has destabilized the region. When you think about this, the rise of Islamic terrorism over a 7-year period, this is like constant. And according to a 2022 study by Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the Middle East and North Africa region has experienced the most warfare in the world the last 50 years, and the study found that the region has accounted for 38% of all armed conflicts between 1970 and 2021. It also found that the Middle East and North Africa region has experienced the most fatalities from warfare the last 50 years. Study also found that the region has accounted for 44% of all fatalities during that same same period. So then I said, let's take a look at a couple other things. When it comes down to Islam as a religion, what is the overall divorce rate for Islam versus others? Well, the overall divorce rate in America is roughly 39%, right? Protestants are 33%, Catholics are 22%, Muslims are 13%. How often do you hear about Muslims getting a divorce? 13%, huh? So they're big on family values, and maybe of the 20,000 people that converted in America to Muslim Americans, 75% are women, 15,000. Is that what they value? They want family values. They don't want the Muslim divorce and all this stuff happening. Maybe that's what it is. So then I'm like, okay, so marriages work out. How many kids do Muslims have? Then you look up the data here, again, on Pew Research, and no matter what part of the world it is, Muslims lead the way with 2.9 babies per woman, and Christians are second at 2.6. But if you go to every single region, Sub-Saharan Africa, number one, Muslims at around 5.2. Middle East, North Africa, Muslims leading the way. North America, Muslims leading the way. Asia Pacific, Muslims leading the way. Europe, Muslims leading the way. So then I'm sitting down, we're having a conversation together during dinner. I said, so Muslims have to be conservative and Republican, right? Because it's about family values, it's about marriage, it's about kids, it's a strong faith, conservative. They're the most intolerant towards LGBTQ community. So what percentage of Muslims vote Republican versus Democrat? 70% of Muslims vote Democrat? We're having a conversation, Pat. It could be because of Israel. Okay, I can see the facts. So are you telling me Muslims in their mind on the way they vote, they're saying, well, the fact that Republicans defend Israel, more, we can't go that route because we're Muslim, but we're also not about this LGBTQ movement that's taking place, and we're about family values. So which way do we weigh it? Do we weigh it out more of us being Republican or Democrat? And watch what happened recently. In 2018, Muslims, only 17% of them voted Republican. Last year, 2022 midterms. You know what percentage? 28%. It increased by 11%. So maybe the last 4 years, Muslims are sitting there saying, yeah, I don't know, Democrats. I mean, I understand the fact that Israel is more something that's on the other side, but now it's both of you guys. I am no longer feeling what Democrats stand for. So maybe Muslims are going through the transition of wanting to say, we relate more to conservative Republicans, more maybe independents, way more than we do Democrats today. Is that an evolution that's taking place today? Who knows? That's what the data says according to Wall Street Journal. You understand where I'm going, where my thought process is going, right? I'm processing this for myself. And at the same time, I'm looking at some of the churches, Christian churches in America, like one of them being thousands of Methodist churches flee over rift. What's going on? This is an article from Christian Post. In the last couple of months, thousands more houses of worship have left the United Methodist Church, having their disaffiliation votes approved by their UMC conferences. Updated total shows that as many as 6,000 churches have fled the UMC in the last couple of years. That's a lot of churches. And the issue shows no signs of slowing down. And even a Christian Post reporter, Michael Grabowski, said the following: for the last several decades, the United Methodist Church has been in a big debate about whether to change its official stance on LGBTQ issues. Currently, the UMC prohibits the blessing of same-sex unions and the ordination of non-celibate homosexuals. So Methodists are sitting there saying, well, the direction you're going, you're being a little bit too comfortable with LGBTQ. That's not part of our religion. Christians are going through it. Catholics are going through it. I had one of my guys today send me a picture about a big church in DC that has a big pride flag. This is the National City Christian Church from DC. This is taking place. At the same time, recently, Bishop Strickland keeps pushing the envelope. He's out of Tyler, Texas, and he's on the heels of apostolic visitation. The Pope is not happy that this bishop from the Catholic Church is pushing the fact that we shouldn't be LGBTQ. So then are Muslims, conservative Christians, some of these real conservative Catholics are coming together and saying, listen, we're tolerant to a lot of things. We are not tolerant to LGBTQ being okay with all this other stuff. Maybe Muslims, conservative Christians, and these guys are finding each other. Kind of weird. They're sitting there saying, listen, I'm against the rising number of teenage pregnancies. Muslims are not for that. I'm against abortions. Muslims aren't for that. I'm against single mothers. Muslims aren't for that. I'm against the meltdown of the family unit. Muslims aren't for that. And neither are the strong Christian conservatives. Maybe these guys have a lot more in common except who they believe is their prophet, Jesus or Muhammad. If we set that aside, you see kind of where this is going? Weird, right? Could there be I don't know. Never thought this would take place. Maybe it is. So it's crazy when you think about this, right? This whole thing got started with stereotypes. Muslims are all this or something. Okay, maybe. Christians are black people, there's white people and something. What would happen if they unified and they got united together? You go to your church, I go to my church, but listen, when it comes down to these values, we gotta protect these in America. We may have escaped Iran or Middle East or whatever to come here because of the chaos, but I definitely didn't leave there because of my conservative Muslim beliefs. I think both Christians and Muslims can kind of pick up and say, that's kind of what you guys do right, and that's kind of what you guys do right. It's kind of what we did wrong. We became too tolerant, and that's kind of what you guys did right. You were kind of intolerant towards compromising some of these values. All in all, one may say many of these stereotypes are right, but how about we do something to change it? I think that's a better place to start, okay, today. So if you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. But another thing I want you to be thinking about is we're taking the podcast live on the road to talk to parents in different cities. The first place I'm going to is Glendale, California. I went to school there, GUSD. So if you're a parent, you want to stay close to us based on some of the topics we're talking about, text the word parents to 310-340-1132 to stay in contact. So if we come to your city, we'll text you. And aside from that, I did a video last week about LGBTQ history. I got a lot of commentary. If you've not seen it, click here to watch it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.